Hi, good afternoon. Today I'm going to speak to you about using 7 lenses to explore yourself and to understand yourself better. So to start with, I want to start with the story of my friend. She was asked to give a performance in front of a large audience, but she had performance anxiety. While mulling over the whole situation, all sorts of things started happening to her. She started feeling dizzy, her heart was beating really fast, she felt really happy and excited at one point of time, and really afraid and anxious the next moment. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach, and she didn't know what to do. What was leading her to feel this way? She wanted to try to understand it. Here it's very important to understand, to know that psychological difficulties may not be your fault, but trying to cope with them, trying to learn how to solve them can definitely be your choice and even your responsibility. So what she was doing was she was looking at herself as a very anxious and a self-doubting person, as opposed to a non-anxious and a confident person. She was looking at herself in dichotomies, thinking that if I'm not this, then I'm the other. And we all do that. We think that we are this kind of person or we are that kind of person, and then these evaluations and descriptions are then later categorized into good and bad. And these labels are judgmental. We need to move away from thinking in dichotomies to understanding various perspectives. So, for example, if you think, I'm always going to be a failure, I'm never going to be successful, that limits your choice for success. And we fail to realize that success can be measured in a wide variety of ways and within different contexts. So if you think you're not the smartest in class or not the best at your job, so you think you're the worst, this is either or thinking, and this leads us nowhere, right? So what do we do here? What are these different perspectives that we can possibly consider to look at ourselves, to explore ourselves, and to understand ourselves? Okay, so let's look at this through the acronym BASIC I.D. BASIC I.D was given by a South African clinical psychologist, Arnold Lazarus, in 1992. So B stands for behavior, which means we act and react. Now let me take the example of my friend to explain to you how this works. So in terms of behavior, she was just pacing here and there, anxiously messaging her friends, asking for reassurances. Next we go to A, that is affect. Affect means emotions, which means we emote. We feel happy, we feel sad. Here, she was feeling so afraid and she was feeling anxious, but she was feeling happy at the same time. And that is so confusing. Next is S, that is sensation. We sense, we respond to sensory stimuli. Here she was feeling dizzy and her vision was getting blurry and she was sweating. Next, we go to I, which is imagery. We fantasize and we use our imagination. She was imagining herself going blank in front of the audience. Next is C, cognition. Cognition basically means thinking process. We think, we have opinions, we have values, we have beliefs, and we have attitudes. So here, in terms of thinking, she was thinking that I'm not going to be able to make it. She was looking at herself from the lens of self-doubt and self-criticality. Next is I, interpersonal relationships. We interact with one another. We enjoy relationships, we tolerate some, and then we suffer some. So here, she was furiously messaging her friends and getting irritated if they did not reply soon enough or reassure her. Next is D, which stands for drugs and biology. it's not just drugs as in substances, but also our biological processes and physical ailments and health-related factors. So here she was experiencing palpitations and she was feeling really stressed out, she was having chest pains, stress headaches, and so on. Here we can see how this basic ID, this template of basic ID, provides us with a comprehensive guide of understanding our own psychological processes. Okay. So now, how do you go about it? How do you go about understanding your own psychological processes? Let us take few examples. We have to understand that this basic ID, these factors of basic ID are not linear or static. They are dynamic, they are interactive, they are interrelated. So let's see what are the interactions that one may see between these various modalities through our daily life events. So for example, let's take behavior. So consider a common behavior that we all go through. You're late to office. Again, what do you feel? You're feeling tensed, you feel afraid, and then what happens? You think, oh my God, I'm late again and the boss is going to talk down to me. And then what do you behave? You avoid the boss. Very normal and very day-to-day things like this happen to us constantly, isn't it? Let's take affect and feelings. So you wake up one day feeling really sad. And then you don't feel like getting out of the bed and you can't get out of the bed. You're feeling tired, you're feeling fatigued. And you're not taking anybody's phone calls, you're not responding to anybody. And then what thoughts do I have? Nobody loves me, that I'm all alone. This is again something we commonly experience. And you see how all of these interact with each other? Next, we speak about cognition or thinking processes. So many times it happens that we want to be right all the time. And then what happens when we want to be right all the time? We argue and argue, not thinking about what the other person is going to feel. And then we end up hurting our loved ones with our words. And then when we do that, we feel tensed and we feel resentful. Next is interpersonal relationship. Now we all argue and fight with each other. So imagine a fight, an argument with your spouse. What happens then? You feel hurt, you feel angry. Then what do you want to do? You want to punish your spouse with, say, the silent treatment. And then what happens? And then you wonder, okay, what's really happening? Where is my relationship going? Right? So again, you see the interactions, and that's the point I'm trying to drive home, that these are all interactive. Okay? Next is drugs and biology. Here I'm going to talk mainly about biological processes, all right? So let's take an example of migraine. Migraine is something very, very common these days. So you are experiencing a very severe episode of migraine. What happens then? Then your vision is getting blurred, you get more sensitive to light and sound, and then you're getting frustrated and you're getting irritated and you feel like crying. And then you shout at your roommate for singing loudly. Okay. So we see how these are all interactive and they affect each other. So okay, so now we've got some idea about all these factors, what are these factors and how they are interrelated, how they interact with each other. Okay, so we've tried some methods to understand ourselves. What next? What do we do? So what did my friend do? Let's go back to her example. She tried to understand her emotions better. She tried to understand that it's very normal and natural to feel unpleasant emotions. We need various emotions. They push us to act, they push us to prepare. And they are not something to be afraid about. She learned to regulate them. Now, does that mean she's not anxious at all? No, of course not. But she has understood her anxiety a little better. She has learned to accept her anxiety. And she probably has more coping skills and more adaptive coping mechanisms. So to begin with, we spoke about multiple perspectives, right? So actually, before I'm going to speak about how to go about coping mechanisms, I'm going to talk about the questions that we've asked ourselves, the exploration that we've done. It's very, very important that we do this exploration in a very non-judgmental way. For that, we need to observe, we need to be aware, we need to acknowledge, and we need to accept our experiences non-judgmentally. When we are being non-judgmental, very easily and immediately, we remove the attack and we lose the threat. And when that happens, the tendency to deny, suppress, and avoid our experiences reduces. So this word non-judgmentally is very important. And non-judgmentally essentially means trying to move away from binaries, trying to move away from dichotomies or of good-bad, which is how we categorize most of our experiences. Okay, so once we have done that, let's go to some coping techniques for BASIC ID. So to begin with, let's see if we can look at our experiences in another way. Is it possible to think, can I look at the situation in another way? Will somebody else look at the same situation in a different way? Are other perspectives possible? Just asking yourself these questions will help you widen your lens a little bit. Next, we go to behavioral methods. You can learn to change your behavioral methods. You can learn techniques that help you slowly reduce your fears and phobias. Then we go to emotions. Emotions are something, we commonly are very afraid of. We don't want unpleasant feelings. We just want to be happy and we want to be excited and we want to feel nice, but we don't want to feel angry. We don't want to feel sad. But hey, we are human. We are going to feel that way. There's no chance any of us are going to escape this. So we can learn to understand our emotions better, the nature of these emotions. We can learn to regulate them, cope with the difficult ones, and also be okay that once in a while we are not going to feel so good. Then we come to senses. So when we are experiencing difficulties and we are not feeling so good, it's very helpful and comforting to use your senses to make yourself feel better. Go for bubble baths, go take a walk in nature, engage in art. All of these techniques that make you feel better, that soothe your senses, are going to help cope with acute difficulties. All right, so after S comes I, which is imagery, which means we can use different mental imagery techniques. And these techniques helps us visualize our plans, our goals, improve our performance, reduce our anxiety, and even improve our fitness, which is something I think all of us are trying to work out constantly. But imagery will definitely help us visualize how do we really want to look. After imagery comes cognition, which is thoughts. Now, dealing with thoughts, you have to understand that thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are simple mental events like dreams, and you are not your thoughts. All right? So, thoughts, when you have erroneous thoughts, when you have dysfunctional beliefs, you can learn to challenge them. And after thoughts, we come to I, which is interpersonal relationships. Many times, we need to learn basic social skills when we have social anxiety or we are simply not exposed to those many people around us. We need to learn how to make eye contact, talk to a stranger, maybe order in a restaurant, say no to a salesperson in a mall, respect private space, be cooperative with each other, and so on. After that comes communication skills, which is also, of course, part of the interpersonal skills, where we learn to fight more effectively, to drive home our point better, and to just be open to even listening to each other. Then we come to drugs and biology. Now here diet, medication, de-addiction, exercise, all of these that we know already, right? So these are very, very important to have a balanced and healthy lifestyle. And when I say health, it means physical health and mental health. Actually, these two are not different things. They are the same things. We have a head and we have a body, and it's one. So we have to understand health as physical health and mental health. Now there are so many more coping techniques that are available, and these were just some examples. Now if we had to go in detail into all of them, it would take therapy sessions lasting way longer than the time we have in hand right now. But when you decide to take the help of well-trained and qualified mental health professionals, they can train you and guide you with these techniques. Also, it's very, very important to understand that it's perfectly okay and normal to seek professional help when life seems overwhelming. And just like my friend, you can learn to look at yourselves from these 7 lenses, and you realize that there are so many factors playing a part in your experiences. You see that you have so many options and opportunities. You see that there are so many choices available, so many more windows to look through, and so many paths you can take. And when you see that, you get unstuck and you move forward. You are empowered with multiple perspectives, and then you cope better. You see that the future is positive and hopeful. And you look at your experiences in a more holistic way. And then you unravel your own parallax. Thank you.